Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says sectarian division, extremism and terrorism are the major threats to the world of Islam today. He made the remarks during a joint press conference with the Kazakh President Nursultan Nazarbayev in Tehran. The two officials discussed ways of enhancing bilateral relations. Resolving the conflicts in Syria and Yemen was also at the heart of the conversation. Tehran and Astana also signed dozens of agreements in various fields, including oil, gas, and transportation, worth a total of $2 billion. Nazarbayev, who's on a two-day official visit to Iran, is scheduled to meet with other Iranian officials. Let's talk with Catherine Shakdam, director of the Shafakna Institute for Middle Eastern Studies, who joins us from London. Well, we're looking at what Iran's president has said regarding the threat to the world of Islam, namely sectarian division, extremism, and terrorism. But regionally speaking, Iran has been trying to prevent these from happening, but yet you have other countries in the region that are promoting these lines exactly.
Well, absolutely. You only have to look at Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, to name only a few, to understand that this narrative has been sold for over for several decades. So it's not something that is new to the Middle East, but I think that the level now that we have reached of radicalization and sectarianism has become a veritable cancer. It is a plague for not just the Middle East, but the Islamic world in general, and the world to a greater extent, because of course Muslim communities are everywhere. And so if you stand to divide them along sectarian line, then you risk igniting tension all over the world. And this is what we see happening. But I think that the main problem is Wahhabism. And we don't talk about it enough, is that we often talk about the different school of thought within Islam, but the different school of thought within Islam have never had any problems cohabiting quite happily. Pluralism is at the core of Islam anyway. And so there is great respect in between different, I would say, currents within Islam. It is really Wahhabism which has, I would say, outlawed this concept of pluralism, just stating that only Wahhabism is the only Islam to be had. And this has led to this philosophy of takfir, which basically calls for the death of all apostates, of all infidels, which essentially are all which are non-Wahhabi. And that's the main problem that we see today. And because Saudi Arabia has carried that message with billions of dollars and a lot of political weight, then we have seen that problem metastasize everywhere. And now when people think Islam, they think Saudi Arabia. They have very little clue as to the realities that is Islam, which is not Saudi Arabia. Islam of Saudi Arabia is just for Saudi Arabia, but sadly, it is this model which has flourished because it has been carried and it has been taught in schools everywhere, in mosques everywhere, and it's becoming, the main theme, the main Islamic thing that everybody thinks, they need to abide by, and that's the problem.
Well, let's take a look at, let's go along with that line that you just presented. We know that some of the Western countries are completely and fully aware of this. We recently had the German foreign minister who came out and said that, Saudi Arabia is promoting this radical Islam through the mosques that they've erected in Germany, including also in France, where there was a cleanup regarding some of the mosques which were promoting sectarianism, in so many words, who were obviously Saudi influenced. But why is it that they are not, they are supporting Saudi Arabia in terms of arms? Catherine Shakdam?
Well, because it makes sense for them financially. You see, that's the problem. Yes, I'm still here. No, what I'm saying is for them it makes sense financially. And so as long as Western powers will, be able to make money, selling arms to Saudi Arabia, they will continue to push and to allow for their agenda to be carried. And I think that's the problem that we're facing today, is that there is a dichotomy in between what Western powers need to do to protect themselves against radicalization and what it is that their officials are willing to do to protect their people from radicalization. And I think that today there is a greater, I would say, awareness as to what needs to be done, but I think it needs to translate politically into greater opposition to Wahhabism. And I'm not saying that people should not entertain relationship with Saudi Arabia, but what they should do is be very clear as to what the Saudi are trying to do and trying to achieve and trying to promote. When they're selling those weapons, when they're trying to come, even in Belgium, they actually discovered that the very reason why they had a terror attack was that because they opened Belgium to Wahhabism, and that most mosques in Belgium are actually preaching Wahhabism. There is a link in between the two that we need to face up to. But again, I think there is no political will just now, not enough anyway, because again, they're still allowing, for Turkey to get away with literal murder, when they are blackmailing the EU, with the threat of, more mass immigration against their land, so they have to pay them tribute almost. It is quite laughable that people talk about counter-radicalization, but are not willing to face the reality of Saudi Arabia's policies. So you can't really talk about counterterrorism or any efforts against radicalization if you're not willing to call it for what it is. What you really trying to fight is Wahhabism. It has nothing to do with Islam. Islam is not even remotely, comparable to what Wahhabism is preaching. And that's the problem. Muslims have said this time and time again, but people are not listening because all they see are their officials siding with the likes of Saudi Arabia and promoting and helping those policies. So I would say that they're as guilty as the Wahhabi preaching for terror because they are allowing it to flourish. And if you were to, I would say, isolate politically Wahhabism and prevent Saudi Arabia from, continuing to vomit its venom, I think you would look at a very, very different world. You would have no tension whatsoever. We would not be talking right now about terror rising up in Libya or in Egypt or in Yemen or in Bahrain or anywhere else for that matter, because Wahhabism would not be existing. So we need to, it's really just about political will. And I think as well, people need to educate themselves and understand that there is a greater, deeper political agenda in this mass manipulation, this Islamophobia, which has risen. There is a reason for it. And the study have played into it because it serves the purpose.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Catherine Shagnam, Director of the Shafakna Institute for Middle Eastern Studies from London.